The chandelier sparkled too hard. Everything in that ballroom gleamed like it was trying to outshine something ugly hiding underneath. Gold trims along the edges of the walls, waiters in white gloves balancing flutes of champagne, and a baby grand piano humming something classical in the background. It was beautiful, too beautiful, like a mask right before it cracks. I stepped into the gala, wearing the only dress I could squeeze into, soft navy blue with a sash just high enough to glide over my belly. Maternity chic, I guess. I told myself to walk slow, head high. I wasn't there to impress anyone, just blend in, offer a polite smile or two, and survive the evening without drawing attention. It's funny how that was always my role in this family. Present, but quiet. Always quiet. James stood by the champagne tower, his back to me, half laughing with his sister. Of course. Marlene was in full peacock mode, red lips, diamonds on every visible surface, soaking in a circle of admirers like it was her coronation. I tried not to stare, not to let the old sting crawl up again. But her eyes flicked over and landed on me for just a moment, cold, amused. She didn't have to say a word. I found a corner near the dessert table and stayed there for a while. Let them have their glitter. Earlier that week, I remembered, she'd offered to help me pick something more flattering for tonight. I'd declined, politely. She'd smiled, not missing a beat. "Oh, sweetie, you're brave to come at all. Pregnancy glows don't mix well with floodlights." The room we were in then had laughed gently. I didn't. Marlene had always known where to poke, never enough to draw blood, just bruises no one could see. From the very beginning, even before the ring was on my finger, she'd found little ways to remind me I didn't quite belong. And I'd always swallowed it. Bit my tongue, smiled when it hurt. My mom used to say, "Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's surrender." She said it when she was dying, actually. I still hear her voice when things go too quiet inside me. Tonight, I promised myself, I'd smile because I chose to, not because I was supposed to. I took a sip of sparkling water, smiled at a kind older woman who asked when I was due. "Just a few weeks," I said softly. She touched my arm with warm fingers and told me I looked radiant. I clung to that word for dear life. Then I heard her. Marlene, loud enough for a few heads to turn, laughing to one of her friends. "I mean, who wears a bump to a black tie gala? It's not brunch, honey." My face stayed still, but inside me something folded, hard and final. I reached for the silver clutch in my lap. My mother's. She'd given it to me on my wedding day. Said, "Every woman needs one thing to hold on to." I'd always thought she meant literally. Now, I wasn't so sure. Marlene approached, theatrical concern in her eyes. "You've got a thread hanging," she said, reaching down toward my side. "Let me just fix that real quick." Rip. The sound was small, but it was all I heard. Gasps around us. I stood frozen, the air sucked out of the room. My dress had split open right where the fabric stretched at my side. Marlene's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh no, it must have been the seam, so embarrassing." She looked around, eyes wide, playing the part of helpful sister-in-law. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew no one would believe them. They never do. They always make you look crazy for stating the obvious, I whispered to myself. I pressed the silver clutch against my stomach like armor. I turned slowly, stepping away from the center of attention, forcing grace into my spine. My husband didn't move, not an inch, not even a glance in my direction. Then it happened. A warm gush. Too warm. My water broke. And the crowd didn't gasp this time. They shrieked. Chairs scraped the floor. Someone dropped a glass. I stood there in the chaos, soaking in humiliation. But something cracked open in me, more than just water and pain. I looked straight at Marlene. "You just made this night unforgettable, for both of us." My voice wasn't loud, but it sliced clean through the noise. The room went dead quiet. As I was let out, waiters scrambling to clear a path, someone yelling for a doctor, I leaned into James and whispered something in his ear. His eyes widened. He didn't speak, just stared. He saw me. For the first time in years, maybe ever, he actually saw me. But what none of them knew, especially her, was that the rip in my dress would unravel more than fabric. It would unravel everything. The sirens cut through the night like knives. I laid back in the ambulance, the ripped fabric of my gown sticking to my skin, wet with sweat and amniotic fluid. My hand clutched the silver clutch like it held something more than old lipstick and tissue. I kept breathing, slow and measured, even as the contractions came sharp and fast. No hand to hold, no voice beside me telling me I'd be okay. When the nurse asked for my emergency contact, I hesitated. I didn't want to say James, not after what he didn't do tonight, but I had no one else. My voice was steady as I gave his name. She nodded, typed it in, moved on. I turned my face to the ceiling tiles. Bright lights above, chaos around me. People rushed with clipboards and stretchers and IV bags. But none of them were mine. No one was there for me. Labor's supposed to bring people together. Mine just made it clear how alone I really was. The room they wheeled me into was cold, sterile, and silent except for the rhythmic beeping from monitors. They hooked me up, checked vitals, gave me ice chips. A nurse told me my husband was on his way. I smiled and nodded, but I didn't believe her. Hours passed, still nothing. I shifted on the bed, winced. Another contraction, sharp, deep, still no James. I remembered a time when he would have been pacing outside a bathroom door if I had a headache, back before his sister started whispering in his ear. "You need to focus on your image, James. She's too emotional, too soft." Slowly, I watched him change. Little things. He started finishing her sentences, agreeing with her even when it meant disagreeing with me. It wasn't neglect, it was trained indifference. I dozed in and out of the pain. When I opened my eyes again, a nurse stood by the foot of the bed, flipping through paperwork. "Do you want to confirm your primary contact?" she asked, showing me the intake form. There it was, right in front of me. Primary family contact, Lyora Vale. I blinked. "That's not me," I said quietly. "Oh," she mumbled, embarrassed. "I assumed your sister-in-law's already been listed for months." My name wasn't anywhere on the form. She'd replaced me, legally, quietly. She wasn't just bossy, she was methodical. This wasn't a woman who hated me. This was a woman who erased me. And he let her. I looked down at my belly, hard and tight now with pain, and I pressed my hand against it. "You and me," I whispered. "We don't have anyone but each other." The labor hit full force not long after. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I breathed through it, slow, focused, unflinching. The nurses said I was brave. One of them smiled and told me, "Women like you make the best mothers. You don't fall apart. You hold it all together." She had no idea what it took to stay that calm. The baby's heartbeat slowed once, and for a moment, my world collapsed. I didn't panic. I prayed. Not loud, not with words. Just a plea in my chest that this child make it here safe, that I live long enough to protect her. When I finally heard the cry, high, sharp, alive, I exhaled everything. They placed her in my arms, wrinkled, tiny, strong. "No one's erasing us ever again," I whispered to her. And I meant it. Morning came through the blinds like an afterthought. My body ached, stitched, and sore, but I was awake in a way I hadn't been in years. There were no flowers, no phone calls, no footsteps in the hall with a sheepish apology. A nurse offered to call family for me. "No thank you," I said. "I'm fine." The doctor raised an eyebrow when I asked to be discharged. "It's too soon," he warned. "You need rest." I signed the form anyway. I didn't need rest. I needed a plan. They wheeled me out in silence. I held the baby, wrapped tight in the hospital blanket, her little face tucked close to mine. I checked my phone. One message. From Lyora. "Next time, try not to bleed on couture." I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I smiled, cold, clear. That night, I didn't just give birth. I woke up. The front door clicked shut behind me with a dull thud. The house was silent. No streamers. No welcome. The nursery lights had been left on, casting a soft glow on the pale blue walls I had painted alone. I stepped inside, cradling my daughter, and took it all in. The crib assembled by my own hands, the stuffed elephant I bought on a whim, still sitting upright in the corner. A single post-it note stuck to the fridge caught my eye. Had to run errands. Congrats. James, that was it. I rocked the baby gently, her tiny breaths warm against my neck. I'd imagined this room filled with family, balloons, the faint scent of cake. Instead, it was too clean, too quiet. A showroom, staged for something that never came. This house was never a home, I whispered to her, just a place to keep up appearances. Her small fingers curled tighter around mine. My back ached and the air felt heavier than before. While rocking her, I thought back to another day. My 30th birthday. I had been hopeful that year. 30 felt like something. I wore a red dress I'd saved up for, thinking maybe James would take me out. Instead, the family threw a surprise party for Leora, her big promotion. On my birthday, they toasted her rise in the firm, brought out a cake with her initials in frosting. Not once did my name come up. I stood near the buffet table, holding a glass of champagne I didn't want. No one noticed. No one asked. When people forget you long enough, you start wondering if you're even real. I adjusted my daughter in my arms and walked into the hall closet. I reached behind stacks of diapers and wipes and pulled out an old family photo album. I hadn't looked at it in years. Flipping through the pages, I felt it in my gut before I saw it. Photo after photo, group shots, holidays, vacations. I was there, barely, pushed to the edge, cropped, cut off, the smile on my face never quite reaching my eyes. I remembered when Leora insisted she take over organizing the albums. "It's just easier if I handle it," she said, waving off my offer to help. But this wasn't ease, it was erasure. They didn't forget me. They erased me. With intention. Later that night, after nursing and rocking and changing, I sat at the kitchen table. The same one we used to host family brunches around. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and a pen. I started writing. Every time they talked over me at dinner. Every party I wasn't invited to. Every text ignored. Every plan changed without telling me. Every time James said, "Leora thinks we should." At first it felt small, bitter. But then it didn't. It felt sharp, clean. Like cutting through fog with a blade. This wasn't petty, this was a pattern. Years of disappearing in plain sight. I poured a cup of tea and added more to the list. And the more I wrote, the more it became clear. This wasn't just me being left out. This was control. Wrapped in smiles, tied with bows, sold as family unity. I tucked the pad into a drawer and opened my laptop. Guardianship, property laws, financial separation, custody. I didn't cry. I researched. No confrontations, no fireworks, just facts, files, screenshots. I forwarded emails to a new address I created. Printed out old texts, saved backup copies of our joint bank statements. They trained me to be silent. They'll regret that. Silence will be my sharpest weapon. Later, while preparing a bottle for the baby, my phone buzzed. One new email. The subject line caught my breath. Prenup bypass strategy. It wasn't even meant for me. Leora's assistant had CC'd the wrong contact. I stared at the screen, hand frozen mid-air, formula spilling over the bottle's edge. My chest tightened, but my face stayed still. She was planning something legal, strategic, like always. But this time, I saw it coming. She built her empire erasing others. But she forgot. I've been watching. The envelope came in the mail. White, thick paper, gold embossed letters. Leora Talbot Design. You're cordially invited to the reveal of our visionary interiors collection. I stared at it for a long time. 1 month postpartum. Sleep deprived. A baby on my chest. No offer for help. No call from my husband. But an invitation to an event that I knew in my gut featured my work. He came home later that evening, loosening his tie like nothing mattered. I held up the card. "I'm going." He gave me that half shrug. "You sure? Probably not the scene for you right now." That sentence sat with me. For you. like I belonged somewhere in the background of someone else's event. Again, I didn't respond. I just went upstairs, fed my daughter, and pulled out the silver clutch my mother had given me. I pressed it to my heart like armor. That night, I walked into the gallery alone. Soft lights danced off clean white walls. Guests whispered over champagne flutes, fingers pointed at installations. The scent of lavender and wine drifted from the catered tables. My heels clicked quietly against the concrete floor. No red carpet, just nerves. I walked deeper into the gallery. My heart sank. On the center wall, visionary contrast, designs by Leora Talbot. I stared. Each piece, each textile, every arch. The same lines I drew during late nights, the same palette I labored over while pregnant. She hadn't even changed the names of the pieces, just put her name on them. The crowd clapped. A woman beside me leaned in and whispered, "She's so brilliant. That eye for layering color, it's almost maternal, don't you think?" I smiled without moving my face. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I walked over to the guest book, signed my name, and looked at the podium near the front of the room. There was a microphone. During the next lull between presentations, I stepped forward, quiet. "Steady. I have something to share," I said, calmly. The host looked startled, but he nodded. I pulled from my clutch a stack of sketches, originals, dated, signed. I held them up beside the installation. "These were designed," I said, "months ago, in my kitchen, while pregnant. These were never submitted to Leora's team. These were mine. She didn't commission me. She copied me." Murmurs rippled. Leora, 3 rows deep, stood up abruptly. "That's not..." I turned to her. "You didn't commission me for applause. You stole my voice." Silence. "You wanted the vision, but not the body that birthed it." I placed the sketches on the podium and looked out at the crowd. My eyes landed on my assigned seat, folding chair, back of the room, next to the catering exit. Of course, I stepped down, walked past the rows, and stood in the center of the gallery. "I don't need a seat," I said. "I need a stage." Gasps turned to scattered claps. A few guests stood. I caught a glimpse of my husband in the back, jaw tight, hands in his pockets. For once, he wasn't standing next to Leora. The PR team rushed toward her. I saw them whispering. She smiled like a cracked vase, trying to hold her shape but leaking fury. Then I saw Elias in the far corner, calm, watching me with that kind of pride that doesn't need to be loud. He didn't clap. He didn't cheer. He just nodded once. And I knew. This wasn't going back to silence. After the crowd began to disperse, I stepped down, ready to leave, my sketches still pinned behind me like proof. A tall man in a charcoal suit approached. He didn't introduce himself, just handed me an envelope. "You deserve your name on those," he said, "and more." He turned and disappeared into the crowd. I opened it slowly. Contract, commission, license terms. Generous. But then, near the bottom, something strange. A clause. Bolded. Intellectual transfer subject to formal review by Talbot Holdings. I stared. I thought tonight was vindication. Instead, it was invitation and threat. The envelope had stayed on the counter for 2 days. I didn't touch it right away. I just walked by it, fed the baby, changed her, let the weight of it hum in the background. When I finally sat down to read the contract from the gallery stakeholder, it read generous, too generous, royalties, credit, creative license. Then, halfway down the second page, buried in fine print, clause 14.2b. All future design concepts derived in whole or part by the signee may be considered co-owned by Talbot Holdings if not formally rescinded within 7 days. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Leora hadn't just tried to erase my past work. She was coming for what hadn't even left my mind yet. Ideas, drafts, anything I would dream up next. I didn't sign. Instead, I wrote up a counterproposal, dated it, printed it, scanned it, sent it to myself 3 ways. And I let it sit in a folder labeled "When They Push Too Far." That morning I realized something. They didn't just want credit, they wanted custody of my future. I texted Tasha. We hadn't spoken in years. College studio mates. She went into copyright law. I went into motherhood and marriage. She responded immediately. Come by tomorrow. Bring everything. By lunch, I sat across from her in a midtown office, my sketches spread across a table. Tasha didn't ask why. She already knew. You need more than proof, she said. You need protection. She began marking dates, reviewing digital timestamps, layering her notes on mine, connecting the dots between gallery installations, invoices, email signatures. I told her about the intern, the one who used to shadow me, bright, wide-eyed, who suddenly stopped responding a year ago. I called her. She picked up. After a long pause, the girl said, She took your files off the server. She told us you approved it. And you believed her? I was scared, she whispered. She said, you were stepping away, that you wanted your name off the projects. My stomach turned. She hadn't just erased me. She replaced me, in real time. Later that evening, back home, I made dinner. He sat across from me, husband, partner, man I used to trust. He said casually, as if talking about the weather, You've had a lot going on lately. Postpartum emotions, stress, it might come off, unstable. I didn't speak. He added, Just thinking ahead, in case custody ever comes up. I looked at him then. The man who once held my hand while picking crib paint, now leaning into legal strategy like it was Sunday golf. You sound rehearsed, I said. He shrugged, took a bite of food. Just thinking about what's best for the baby. I leaned back. There's nothing more dangerous than a woman who's done pretending she's okay. His fork paused mid-air. That moment, that exact second, I felt the power shift. He didn't know how to respond without a script. I cleaned the dishes, took my daughter upstairs, and while she slept, I opened a journal. Not for therapy, for war. I began listing moments, conversations, lies, small cuts that now bled like rivers, each entry a timestamp, each paragraph a record. I wasn't just healing, I was archiving, and just in case they tried to spin the story, I booked a therapy session, not to be fixed, but to prove I wasn't broken. The next morning, a knock at the door, flowers, wrapped in black tissue, no card, black tulips. I Googled it. Symbol of vengeance, of inner strength. It wasn't random. I placed them in a vase, set it right in the foyer window, facing the street, let them see it, let them know I saw them too. That night, I checked the baby monitor. She was sleeping soundly. Then I heard it, my own voice, not live, recorded. A line I'd said in the nursery 2 days ago about fear and freedom. I froze. I walked to the room. Empty. Silent. No one there. But someone had been. I whispered into the dark. They're not just watching now. They're listening. And I knew then. This wasn't about deleting me anymore. It was about predicting and owning my next move. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I just sat there, rocking slowly beside her crib, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, while my voice, my recorded voice, played again and again in my mind. They'd been inside, somehow, some way. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't paranoia. By mid-morning, I had gone room to room, inch by inch, checked smoke detectors, air vents, the back of photo frames. I found nothing, but that meant nothing. It wasn't about the camera, it was about the message. So I picked up the baby monitor, turned my phone camera on, held both up to the light, and smashed the monitor against the tile floor. Glass flew, wires sparked, and I looked into the lens and said, calm and clear, you won't hear another whisper unless I decide to scream. Then I sat down at my desk and opened a blank document. No headers, no filters, no hashtags, just the truth. It started with my name and a single line. Silence isn't golden, it's a muzzle. And I just tore it off. By late afternoon, I was in the corner booth of a coffee shop across from Elias. He looked like someone who hadn't slept either. He didn't waste time. I overheard my mother talking to Grayson, he said. Something's coming. Bigger. Personal. I didn't blink, just stirred my coffee. He kept going, voice lower now. She's afraid of you. But not because of what you've said, because you're still standing. He slid a flash drive across the table. What's on it? A piece, he said. Just a piece. The rest. You'll have to catch live. I narrowed my eyes. Why now? He looked down, ashamed. Because I saw what she did to you and said nothing. And now, she's doing it to me too. I didn't forgive him, but I didn't walk away either. You don't reject a lifeline just because it's fraying. That evening, I showed up at a charity event, not glamorous, just community faces, small crowd. I came for normalcy, and I should have known better. Halfway through the speeches, the lights dimmed. A slideshow began. The screen flashed with shaky cell footage, me crying in the nursery. Another shot, me staring blankly into space. Audio clips of me muttering to myself, exhausted, postpartum, drowning. Then came the voice. Her voice. Lyora. Some women aren't ready for motherhood, she said. Some unravel at the seams. Laughter mixed with gasps. Then silence. Every eye turned to me. I stood, walked calmly to the mic. I took a breath. I was broken, I said. But not now, and anyone who weaponizes trauma doesn't belong at a table for healing. No drama, just truth. And this time, the applause was real. Not all clapped, but enough did. Back home that night, I stared at myself in the mirror. They expect shame, I whispered. Give them strategy. I opened my journal, selected an excerpt, and hit record. Then I posted the video, what I survived while smiling at family dinners. By morning, the comments rolled in. Women, strangers, friends. Quiet voices finally speaking up. Me too. I remember this. You're not alone. I never said her name. I didn't need to. Breadcrumbs speak louder when you're starving for truth. Then I did more. Posted sketches, uploaded designs, watched them go viral. I called a publisher. No name. Just a pen and a manuscript titled Erased While Alive. I met with a security firm. This time, I wasn't afraid. I was done being a sitting target. You don't wait for someone to poison you twice before you learn to test the wine. Then, I opened the flash drive, password-protected folder. Orion. Inside, emails, screenshots, a message preview from Grayson to Leora. If she speaks again, we shut it all down, permanently. I leaned in and whispered to myself, then let's see how loud silence can scream. I pulled my coat over the blazer I hadn't worn since before the baby. The fabric still smelled faintly like old coffee and lavender. Fitting, I thought. My scent before all of this began. The files were packed neatly in a slim black folder. Flash drive in my clutch. My phone charged. Backup copies uploaded to 2 clouds. Baby sleeping with her godmother, someone I trusted beyond blood. I stood in front of the mirror one last time, practiced the words, watched my mouth move like it belonged to someone else. I will not be silenced again. The drive was quiet. Streets flickered past like memories. I replayed the Orion folder in my head, those time-stamped emails, threats masked as legal protocol. I knew what I was walking into. By the time I pulled into the venue, I could already hear applause through the glass walls. Lyora, draped in a navy silk suit, stood on the stage. Cameras followed her like bees to a bloom. Poised. Perfect. Poison. She was halfway into her speech when I walked in. Family legacy, innovation, and grace under pressure, she said. In times like these, we must rise above noise. We must not let those who leak stories for attention distort what real resilience looks like. Cameras pivoted. Microphones twitched. I kept walking. Whispers floated. Isn't that her? That's the one from the gallery. Didn't she just have a baby? Leora didn't flinch. Not yet. I waited until she gestured toward the future of the brand, speaking of shared vision and collective brilliance. That's when I stepped forward. Behind me, a projection screen came alive, contract pages blown up for all to see. Highlighted in red, Clause 13.2, Co-ownership and moral rights waiver of all future designs. Gasps. Lyora's voice stuttered. The air changed. I turned to the room. This is what I was offered. A future where my ideas, my child's legacy, would no longer be mine. I turned back to her. I was signing nothing. I'm claiming everything I built, in my name. Lyora's lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time, she had no script. I scanned the room, eyes bouncing between us like a courtroom without a judge. Some frowned, others leaned in. Then I saw her. Corinne, standing off to the right. My mother-in-law. The matriarch who never raised her voice, but who never needed to. Her approval, or lack thereof, had always been unspoken law. She looked at me, and in her eyes, something cracked. For a moment, her stern face softened. There was recognition, maybe not agreement, but a fracture in the wall, maybe even regret. Then, she turned away. Her chin trembled, just once. I looked back at Leora. Her smile twitched, just slightly, and that was enough. I stepped down from the stage. My heels echoed as I walked off, straight into the waiting hands of reporters and questions and flashes. I didn't answer, just smiled. Let them chase the truth. Behind me, Leora stood frozen, her team scrambling like ants in a flood. One assistant whispered frantically into a headset, another tugged at her sleeve. Grayson wasn't there. Again. And that told me everything I needed to know. From the far side of the room, Elias nodded once. Quiet solidarity. No more reaction. No more waiting. This time, I was the one moving first. Hours later, I checked into a quiet hotel. I didn't want to go home yet. Not until I'd seen what the world would do with what I'd dropped. After brushing my teeth, I found an envelope on the floor just inside the door. No knock. No footsteps, just paper, like a whisper left behind. Inside, a boarding pass. First class. Paris. Tonight, 10:45 p.m. No note. No sender. I sat on the bed, stared at it for a long while. Then I said out loud, not to anyone, but just to the silence. They're giving me all the places to run, but none to hide. They thought I wouldn't come back. That after the last time, after the dress incident, the fake smiles, the snide whispers, I'd stay hidden, nurse my pride somewhere far away and quiet. But pride wasn't what got me here. Survival did. I stepped out of the car slowly, evening air thick like velvet. Cameras clicked the moment my heel touched the ground. I didn't flinch. The silver clutch in my hand weighed heavy, not from makeup, but from flash drives and folded truth. Security recognized me, didn't stop me, just stiffened. Inside, the ballroom shimmered, same gold chandeliers, same hushed prestige. But the current had changed. People weren't just watching the stage anymore, they were watching the door, watching me. I walked in through the side, avoiding the main aisle. No grand entrance, just presence. Leora was already up there, poised like always, her teeth showing just enough to pass for charm. But her smile was cracked now, brittle. I didn't need to be introduced. I walked straight to my seat near the front. People parted without meaning to, like instinct. When her assistant came over 15 minutes later and whispered something, I knew. They were going to try something performative, bring me up like a prop, let me play a role in their show. Fine, I followed her up, calm. Camera lights already turning to me. They thought it was to honor a charitable partner. Some soft applause, an empty plaque and photo op. What they got was the real. Before the assistant could cue the video, I pulled the remote from my clutch and tapped play. The screen behind Leora lit up. Contracts, stamped, signed by her team. Clauses highlighted. Her voice recorded. She won't read the fine print. Just let her sign it. Then, screenshots of my original designs, timestamps, months before her company released them under a new label. A pause. A collective breath sucked in by 100 mouths. I stepped forward. For years, I said, voice steady, I let other people frame the story about me. Let them turn my grief into weakness, my silence into guilt. But not tonight. Leora didn't move. her hands clenched tight at her sides. The applause didn't come, not yet, just a room full of eyes. Then it happened. A sharp ache twisted through me, then pressure, heat, and then, sudden. My water broke, right there, in front of all of them. There was no way to hide it. My dress darkened, gasps flew, chaos stirred. I held the mic tighter. My body broke in your theater, but not my resolve. Security rushed in. Leora stepped back, for once unsure of the script. I caught someone in my periphery moving fast. Elias. He reached me just as my knees wobbled. He steadied me, then did something I didn't expect. He grabbed the mic. "She is my mother," he said, his voice calm but loud. "She always has been." The room froze. People turned. Leora's face lost color. He looked at me, then at her. This family buried too much, but not anymore. In the chaos, someone brought a chair. Another handed me water. I sat, breathing hard, contractions beginning to roll through me, but I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I sat there holding my belly like a shield made of fire. The narrative wasn't just shifting, it was crashing down. Reporters pushed forward. The live stream continued. No one cut the feed. They didn't dare. Lyora's team huddled, their whispers now desperate. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Then from the back, Grayson appeared. He didn't walk to me. He didn't go to her either. He just stood there, watching, conflicted, hollow. The crowd parted again, this time for the paramedics. They approached gently. One of them whispered, "You ready?" I nodded, but before they led me out, I looked once more toward the cameras. "You wanted a show?" I said. "Here's one you won't forget." Later, in the back of the car, with warm towels around me and my baby sleeping in my arms, my phone buzzed. Text message, unknown number. "We're bringing Orion forward. Final stage." I stared at it. Next to the message preview, another notification. Paris flight canceled. I looked down at my daughter's tiny hand, wrapped around my finger, then whispered into the quiet. "No running. Tonight ends it." Narrator voice followed me like breath. They forced my water to break on stage, but they forgot. I was never just water. The sunroom was warm that morning. Not hot, just warm enough to make you forget the cold ever happened. Nova slept in my arms, breathing slow, her tiny fist curled against my chest like she'd been there forever. Outside, the grass looked fuller than it did a month ago. Or maybe I was just noticing it now. I sipped tea, finally hot. Not lukewarm like all those other mornings when I never got to finish a cup. A pile of letters sat on the table. Not bills, not threats, just pages from strangers who saw what happened and wrote things like, "You helped me speak up," or "I watched you stand tall when you could have disappeared." I didn't write back, not all of them. But I read every word. Elias had come by twice that week. No speeches, no guilt, just quiet visits. He'd hold Nova for a few minutes, sometimes read to her. We didn't talk much about Lyora anymore, not because it didn't matter, because it wasn't running the room anymore. I looked down at Nova and whispered, "Some chapters don't need rewriting, just closure." That afternoon, the doorbell rang. A courier handed me a thick envelope, legal papers, divorce filings. From Lyora's husband, fraud, misrepresentation, financial misconduct. The headlines wrote themselves. Apparently, the man had finally stopped pretending. Accounts frozen, statements made public. Lyora's empire had cracks that went deeper than I ever guessed. And now the whole world saw it. Later that night, I got sent a clip. Her apology, pre-recorded, rehearsed. Eyes not meeting the lens. Words landing flat. I watched 10 seconds, then shut it off. Redemption isn't a performance. It's personal. And I'm not the narrator of hers. Nova stirred. I held her closer. This child won't carry my trauma. She'll carry my love. I named her Nova because it meant new. It meant cosmic restart. It meant light after collapse. Our days were simple now. That's what felt revolutionary. 3 a.m., feedings, first real bath, me humming a lullaby off key in the dark. I didn't need a microphone anymore. I just needed this room, her heartbeat, and mine. Offers poured in. Interviews, talk shows, deals. I declined all of it, not because I was scared, because I was deliberate. The loudest victories aren't screamed into crowds. They're whispered into a baby's ear at 3:12 in the morning. A week later, I sat at my desk, same one I once stared at while wondering if I'd ever make sense of it all, and typed something under my real name. It wasn't a tell-all. It was a letter. One I never got to read from anyone else. So I wrote it for someone who might need it. Family, I typed, isn't always who shares your blood. Sometimes it's who stands in your corner when everything else tells them not to. Truth, I wrote, isn't always the loudest voice in the room. But it's the one that still echoes after the noise fades. And then, sometimes, strength is choosing not to burn the bridge, but to walk away smiling. I ended the post with a line that felt like a handshake. Don't let anyone edit your story while you're still living it. That Sunday, Elias texted me, said he was starting work with a nonprofit that helps teens age out of the foster system, asked if I'd speak someday. I said yes, not because I had something to prove, but because healing deserves witnesses too. That evening, as Nova napped on my chest, I stood in front of the mirror, ran a brush through my hair, caught my reflection, not tired, not broken. Sure, I wasn't just the woman in the ripped dress. I was the one who rewrote what came after.